figure out how to get rid of the cult and how to get to a decentralized government that's just as effective as a standards body or something else, and to get a regular upgrade cadence. And then you can just have an all-you-can-eat buffet of open source technology, and you can take a look at all these cool experiments and bring them in and put them into the product. And I think that's one of the hallmarks of Cardano. We had 3 pillars, and one of them was sustainability. And within that pillar wasn't just energy efficiency, it was also the sustainability of upgrading. And getting rid of centralized custodians, getting rid of centralized governance, and getting to a point where a large group of people can coordinate through a decentralized way and make decisions and eventually have those decisions reflected as hard forks, so you can change the protocol.
Bitcoin is saying we only want money and it just needs to be as robust as possible. And then you have these others that are saying we want everything in it. We want to be able to, baptize my dog on chain or whatever. They just want to add all these features. And you're saying that, the Bitcoin people, they're scoffing, they're saying that's a problem. I think the big issue is not that they're not incorporating those things. I think it's that they're pushing back against the people who are innovating and saying, actually, we don't need any of those things that you're adding.
Right.
This is enough. They're really scoffing at the idea that these are actually valuable tools that we should be looking into, like now that we have blockchain technology.
Right. Well, then what is Bitcoin useful for then? That's the question I always ask the maximalists. They say, well, if it's money, it's not a particularly good one because it's volatile, really slow settlement times, and very expensive to transact. Oh, it's a digital store of value. Oh, okay. Well, then you're always asking a question of efficiency. Is it worth the cost to build a system with this type of store of value? They say, well, that's a feature, not a bug. The fact that it costs so much to make it is what makes it valuable. Okay. Well, then why are all these other things that it doesn't cost so much to make valuable? They say, oh, that's because it's a Ponzi scheme.
Obviously,
Charles.
Charles.
Yeah, and they just listen to this stuff. It's like, okay, there is only one true God, and his name is Satoshi. So I understand what you're saying there, but then I always beg the question of, well, if that's all you want to do, is this the best way of doing it, or is there a more efficient way of doing it that achieves the same ends? And then second, to your point, the fact that they're able to shut down a very legitimate conversation about improvements and upgrades shows you a problem of governance. How do we know the proportions? Maybe only 10% are the don't upgrade anything Church of Satoshi, and 90% are we want smart contracts yesterday. How do we know? There's no governance system. There's no on-chain voting system. There's no way to poll the public and express vote. And what does it mean to own and hold a Bitcoin? Do you have any rights for that? You can build in a decentralized organization rights embedded within the token itself. But for some bizarre and alien reason, we've never gotten there with Bitcoin. So there are no rights for it. You hold it, it has value, but it gives you nothing. Meanwhile, all these third generation protocols, they're saying if you hold it, you can delegate, you can vote, and some are even writing constitutions and embedding them and so forth. So if I'm coming from the outside, an average everyday person, and they say, okay, there's option A and there's option B. Option A only does one thing. It's very hostile to any change or outsiders, and it's very expensive to maintain, but it's been around for a long time. And option B, you can participate, you can vote, you can delegate, you have a voice, you have choice, you have a government, you can debate things and people take you seriously. Oh, and by the way, you can use it to enable ICOs and STOs and RealFi and DeFi and NFTs and whatever your heart's content is. And every 3 years, it gets magically better and faster and cheaper and more meaningful, and governments will eventually start integrating it. Which one would you rather have? And the Bitcoin people say, well, obviously A. And everything else, we're going to change everything else. We're going to change all the governments. We're going to change all society, but we only need to do A. I say, well, how do you vote? Bitcoin, how do you do that? Layer 2 protocols, what are they actually when you dig under the hood? Very federated or highly centralized, controlled by a small group of actors. How is that any better than the BIS? How is that any better than any central bank? How's that any better than any institution? In fact, it's worse because at least those institutions as quasi-governmental or governmental are subject to audit and oversight and democratic processes. These other things are just controlled by people who are completely unaccountable, unelected, and basically meritocratic. That's Google. That's Microsoft. That's Amazon. That's Facebook. Are we getting along with the surveillance economy they've constructed and the control they have over the internet? Absolutely not. No one's really happy about that. Yet we want to just go and trade them for another group of people and have no provisions to hold them accountable because Bitcoin's not going to do it. You have to upgrade Bitcoin to create smart contracts and have all of these other things. I mean, if Bitcoin was upgradable, there would be, as I said, no Ethereum. Vitalik would have built Ethereum as an overlay protocol on Bitcoin. That's what he was trying to do. He first tried to do it on Prime Coin, and he was working on Color Coins and Mastercoin. This was the obvious approach to him. He said, well, it already has the network effect and everything. He wasn't trying to get rich. He wasn't trying to issue a token. He was just trying to solve a legitimate problem. And he had no idea that Ethereum was going to be so big. Had he known, we'd probably been a lot more careful with the way we founded it and all the contracts in the beginning. It was just a bunch of people who were deeply frustrated. I did BitShares because there was no way to do an algorithmic stablecoin on Bitcoin. There was no way to do a decentralized exchange on Bitcoin. There was no way to even conceive of this technology. And as an overlay protocol, it's super expensive to maintain and has a very kludgy user experience. Your onboard is you have to buy Bitcoin, get into this overlay system, you do all this stuff in the overlay system, and then you settle here. It takes hours to come in and out of the system, and every transaction bundled here is expensive to do, and then the core developers are attacking you. Originally, when Op Return came out and Mastercoin was using, core developers say, how dare you pollute the blockchain with all this garbage? Go create another cryptocurrency. And they had the same umbrage with Namecoin and all these other things.
And people did, and then they castigated them for that.
Yeah, because you're a shitcoin, and you're an evil human being and a scammer, and how dare you do these things, and so forth.
Well, I think the Scott Stornetta really said it best. So he's cited 4 out of the 8 times in the Satoshi white paper. It's the inventor of blockchain technology. And he said, Bitcoin got the ball over the net. People were trying for a really long time to figure out how do you have something that's decentralized that people can trust. But he says that our future is going to be this multi-coin, multi-chain universe. We're going to have all these systems. You're going to have people who say, listen, I want something simple. I just want something that is expensive and I can't really use for transactions, but it's a store of value and it's going to sit there and it's simple and I don't need to worry about delegating and I don't need to worry about governance because I can't be bothered.